we're ready to check out part B and part C. So for part B then, we have an equation x equals 3. And it's always a good idea to go ahead and see how is this different than what we were looking at a moment ago in part A. As you look at part A, we had both the variable x and the variable y, and we ended up having a line that had a slant to it. Well, in B, we have only an x, no y. So what does that mean then as we move forward? In this world of given an x but not a y, that means that y can be anything we want it to be, but x always has to be 3. So on this particular problem, I'm going to go ahead and move forward with the directions as given, and then I'm going to make a comment about something you should notice from this point forward when you look at an equation like x equals 3. So again, we know that x has to be 3 on this problem. So in my xy table then, I'm going to start off and say, well, I don't have a choice. X has to be 3. And then y, again, can be anything I want it to be. So let's go ahead and let y be -1. That means then that I'm going to have the point 3, -1. Well, 3, -1 means that I'm going to come over to an x value of 3, then I'm going to go to a y value of -1, and I'm going to plot that point. Well, okay, let's do another point. Once again, I don't have a choice for the x. The x has to be 3. So there's my x value of 3, and y can be anything I feel like. Let's just say it's going to be 0. So there it is, 0. And then again, the author likes 3 points, so let's go ahead and do a third one. 3 has to be the x. Y can be anything we want it to be. Let's put in a 1. So up here at 3, 1. And once again, we have 3 dots. They all line up nicely on a straight line. That gives us an indication that things are going well. Let's connect those 3 dots with a straight line. So now that we have that straight line, I said I would come back and say, let's see something that is a generalization that we can use from this point forward. So when you see an equation that has x equaling a constant, notice that this line is not just any old line. It's a very special kind of line. It's a vertical line. And that's something you want to keep in mind as we move forward throughout the next couple of sections. That anytime you look x equals a constant, it will always be a vertical line. Now, in this case, it was x equals 3, so it's the vertical line that crosses through the x-axis at 3. If the equation was x equals 7, we would then have the vertical line that crosses through the x-axis at 7. Well, let's look at his friend over here, part C. The equation is y equals -5. Now, once again, notice that the x is not there, but the y is. So it's again going to be one of those weird kind of lines. It's not going to be a line that has a slant to it. So how do we graph this kind of graph? Well, again, we can do it 2 different ways. We can do it according to the directions, and we can actually plot points. Then, once we have that done, we'll talk about a generalization. Well, this time, since y equals -5, I get to choose anything I want for x, but y always has to be -5. So, okay, choose anything you want for x, -1, and y has to be -5. So that means then that we're going to have the point -1, -5. Well, okay, here's -1 right there on the x, and -5 for the y is going to be down here. So there's the point, -1, -5. Well, let's do another point. So for our second point, again, I get to choose anything I want for x. So I'm going to choose 0. But y has to be -5. So we'll put the -5 in there. 0, -5 is right there. And finally, let's choose another x value, 1. Once again, the y has to be -5. So we have the point 1, -5. 1, -5 is right there. Put the line that goes through those 3 dots, and we have a special kind of line. This is a horizontal line. So now, from this point forward, you want to keep in mind that anytime you're looking at a line, and it is y equals a constant, that line will always be a horizontal line. Now, this is y equals -5, so it's the horizontal line that goes through the y-axis at -5. But if we had y equals 15, it would be the horizontal line that goes through the y-axis at 15.